Hello, today is Thursday, July 2nd, 2026. Here is your daily signal. According to Business Insider, global oil supply has recovered, easing fears of shortages and resulting in a decline in Brent crude prices to $84.20 per barrel. This recovery follows OPEC Plus production adjustments and a reduction in geopolitical tensions since 2024, with Brent crude recently averaging around $85 as markets react to supply increases. The outlook for oil demand is shaped by ongoing economic activity in China, India, and the United States, as well as energy transition policies. Forecasts from the International Energy Agency indicate global oil demand growth is slowing in the second half of 2024. OPEC Plus, led by Saudi Arabia and Russia, plays a central role in production targets, while oil majors like Shell, BP, and ExxonMobil are shifting strategies alongside government agencies monitoring consumption trends. Key numbers show OPEC Plus announced a continued phased increase in production targets on July 2, 2026, suggesting improved global recovery, while IEA projections for Q3 demand growth have tempered to only 1.2 million barrels per day. As supply rebounds and demand growth slows, Brent prices may remain under $85 per barrel in the near term, creating pressure on oil companies' margins and prompting tighter discipline on production. Lower energy costs could benefit industrial activity in consumer economies such as India and China, and over the longer term, oil companies may accelerate investments in renewables as demand growth retreats. Next, we turn to the massive surge in AI investment and its repercussions. Fortune reports that the Bank for International Settlements now sees a $1 trillion AI investment boom, drawing explicit comparisons with historic financial bubbles but with even bigger stakes. Since 2023, major AI projects from NVIDIA and Microsoft have fueled this boom, reminiscent of the dot-com and subprime bubbles, where capital floods drove speculative growth and eventual corrections. The sector's unprecedented valuations have raised concerns, as asset prices appear increasingly detached from fundamentals, a warning echoed by regulators and analysts who note the striking similarities to past bubbles. Industry leaders such as NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and OpenAI have committed billions, alongside major venture funds like Sequoia Capital and SoftBank, and central banks including the U.S. Federal Reserve and SEC are issuing cautions. On July 2, 2026, NVIDIA unveiled a $25 billion expansion in its chip manufacturing, and Morgan Stanley flagged $1 trillion in AI infrastructure commitments over the past 18 months. The SEC has formally warned investors about concentrated risks and speculative behavior in AI investments. The near-term fallout may include heightened volatility in tech equities, especially those heavily exposed to AI infrastructure. If companies fail to deliver sustainable profits, systemic risk could trigger broader corrections, echoing historic bubble patterns. Central banks are likely to tighten oversight, and if speculative investments unwind, we may see a contraction in venture funding and startup valuations, impacting innovation cycles across the tech sector. Finally, let's move on to U.S. government efforts to accelerate quantum computing adoption before 2028. New Scientist highlights the administration's push for a practical quantum computer by that year, aiming to vault the U.S. into a leadership role. Since the National Quantum Initiative Act passed in 2018, annual federal funding for quantum research has climbed above $800 million, with agencies like DOE, NSF, and NIST at the forefront. Quantum computing is viewed as crucial for national security, cryptography, materials science, and drug discovery, and the ambitious 2028 target also seeks to jumpstart commercialization. Stakeholders span government agencies and industry giants such as IBM, Google, and Microsoft, plus startups and major universities like MIT and Stanford. On July 2, 2026, the Department of Energy committed $50 million to quantum hardware partnerships, aiming to double U.S. quantum capacity by late 2027. IBM and NSF announced an expanded quantum alliance, including open access testbeds for researchers, and the White House has updated procurement guidelines with new incentives for U.S.-based quantum chip makers. In the short term, increased federal investment may attract top talent and boost U.S. quantum startups, while new procurement rules could open commercial opportunities for American hardware manufacturers. Over the medium term, U.S. Leadership in quantum technology promises advances in cybersecurity, data protection, and disruptive progress in materials science, logistics, and drug discovery by 2028. Now, onto the markets. International markets saw mixed results, with Germany climbing 2.7% day over day as Germany's EWG reached 42.31, while France also gained 2.1% and EWQ closed at 45.92. The UK advanced by 2.7% with EWU hitting 47.16, and Italy added 2.5% to close at 60.63, while Spain also edged higher. The Netherlands and Chile slipped slightly, while China large cap was nearly flat, and Japan showed little movement. In commodities, gold rose over 2% with GLD closing at 378.13, while silver jumped 2.7% and SLV ended at 55.02. Platinum outperformed at 3% higher. Crude oil posted a modest 0.7% gain with USO finishing at 103.98. In the sector's space, healthcare led with a 2.6% gain as Roman 45 stood at 163.74, while finance and real estate also advanced over 1%. Semiconductors lagged, falling 5.6% with SOX closing at 566.32, and clean energy slid 4.9%. Among key favorites, Adobe surged 4.1%, Apple rose 4.8% day over day, and Microsoft advanced by 1.6%. While AMD dropped 4.2% and Marvel fell 9.8%. Top gainer Zhongzhou ZCMB soared over 379%, while Circulogene Circ was the steepest decliner, tumbling 98%. That's it for today. You can find more news and details on our website. Goodbye.